Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Rare Book Cafe Coffee Break. Today, I'm sharing hosting duties with Richard Mori of Mori Rare Books in Nashua, New Hampshire. And Richard has an event coming up that he's going to tell us about. He's also going to tell us about the special guest that we have today. Richard, what's going on?
Well, we're going to be talking about the Concord Book Fair. I think it's like a 47th rendition. It's held June 2nd at the Everett Arena in Concord, New Hampshire. And we're going to have Richard Thorner, who's been a longtime dealer at the show. I've known Richard myself over 25 years, and we're excited to have him. He brings a wealth of knowledge and experience, and he's a fun guy to talk to.
And we'll look forward to talking to both of you in just a few minutes. Thanks for tuning in. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Rare Book Cafe Coffee Break, the book lover's paradise, actually the book lover's rendezvous, but whatever is fine with us. My co-host, Ed Markiewicz, is on an airplane headed to Greece, and while he'll be joining us at some later dates today, I have well, he's not exactly a guest, Richard Mori of Mori Rare Books in New Hampshire is joining us today, and Richard is on so often as the road warrior that we feel like he's really a member of the staff here. Richard has corralled a guest for us today. Another Richard Thorner of Resser Thorner and Americana, also in New Hampshire. And Richard Mori is going to tell us a little bit about his latest project, which is an upcoming book and paper show. And then we'll hear a little from Richard Thorner about what he's going to be bringing to the show. So, Richard, what's your latest project?
Hi, Lee. So, did I just get an upgrade in pay? Did
Yes,
I
you
get
did.
what
You're
I?
going to get
Oh,
twice what you've been getting.
oh,
Yes.
wonderful! Oh,
Yes.
I
We're,
can't
we're
wait.
very generous today.
Well, thank you. It's so good to see you always, and it's so good to be back with you. Um, we're having a beautiful day here in New Hampshire today, just gorgeous. And I'm actually out delivering these show cards to a bunch of businesses throughout New Hampshire. Um, this is what it looks like this year. I have an excellent designer. He's a very expensive, but does good work. And but I'm not going to share his name because I don't want other people to take up his time. But we're
Well,
very pleased to announce again that the show in Concord, New Hampshire at the Everett Arena, June 2nd, opening at 10 a.m. in the morning, is going to go on, and we're excited about it. And I'm really pleased to have Richard Thorner with us. I've known Richard for years. He started off as a customer of mine, probably what 25 years ago at least, Richard, and
At
maybe
least.
at least. And he gradually realized that he liked books so much that he didn't understand why he was working as a lawyer. So he's been doing books more and more, and we're pleased to have him here to talk about the show as well.
and
Richard.
we think you must, from talking to you before we started recording, that your first contact with Richard Mori, you must have been about 10 years old or so.
Well, no, my first contact with Richard is probably back in the 90s.
Yeah.
But in terms of working within the field, if you will, Richard may or may not be aware of it, but it's been I have this photo which I suppose I could bring up, but from 1972 when my mother and I bought 20 boxes of books at a local auction here in Manchester, New Hampshire. So I've been at it for a long time.
Well, I think you should start young. I'm trying to train my grandchildren to do that. at the moment. So, what are some of the things you're going to be bringing to the show? What can you show us that you're planning to bring?
Well, I specialize in historical items, largely
Right.
paper. Books are part of that, and books that have some sort of an association, which Lee, you pointed out, every bookseller looks for that as well. But I sort of limit myself in terms, from selling books to association copies or extra illustrated copies. And one of the things that I brought with me today is a book that had come from Charles Dickens's library, which was a book on John Ruskin, which is kind of an interesting association in and of itself. And the book has in it the typical, if you can see up at the top here, Dickens's book plate that he used during his lifetime, and then upon his death in 1870, the executors or the family created a book plate indicating that the book came from Charles Dickens from his library at Gad's Hill, and that's the secondary book plate here at the bottom. So it has the book plate of his contemporary use, and then it has the post-mortem, if you will, or posthumous is probably a better word, book plate that was used for Dickens's library. This comes with a slipcase that actually has a leather label that is basically, from what I can gather, talking to my book plate collecting friends. I also collect primarily 18th century American book plates, and I deal in those. But this has a leather label of Dickens's, which you never see. So it actually has 3 ownership indicia. That is to say, his lifetime book plate, his posthumous book plate, and this leather label as well. So that's the type of thing that I would be bringing to the Concord Book Fair. I also, as I say, deal in paper, and one of the things I recently acquired was this notice, and again, it's in a glass scene, so I hope the reflection's okay. This was the very first printed notice on the death of William Henry Harrison in 1841, and it was printed on the day he died, and has a very poignant description, basically saying, "In all wise providence, having suddenly removed from this life William Henry Harrison, late President of the United States, we have thought it our duty, in the recess of Congress and in the absence of the Vice President from the seat of government, to make this afflicting bereavement known to the country by this declaration under our hands." And this was, in fact, printed and dated on the very day that William Henry Harrison had died, and is signed in the type by Daniel Webster, who was Secretary of State at the time, and then 4 other cabinet members from the Harrison administration. So this came from the Sang collection, which was a sort of a very important collection that sold in the 1970s, sort of a competitor, if you will, but never quite exceeding the Streeter collection from the 1960s. Sang also had a very important Americana collection, and that's where that came from. So that's the type of thing that I deal in, and it will be the type of thing that I bring to the Concord, New Hampshire Book Fair.
That announcement is really interesting. So Congress was not in session at the time
Congress
of
was
death.
not in session,
And where was the Vice President?
Yeah, the Vice President was not in Washington at the time. So it's very interesting as to, I don't know exactly when Tyler found out that the president had died, but there had to have been a period of time that the country did not have a president.
Right.
Which, of course, happens anytime there's an unexpected death. William Henry Harrison was the first president that died in office. I don't know who was running, if anyone was running the government during the time he died, and Vice President Tyler was sworn in as president. But he was outside of the city at the time.
And there would have automatically been a delay in getting word to him.
Absolutely.
You
And of
can't
course,
pick up the cell phone and call him.
Right. And I don't even think the telegraph lines were
Or
operating at the time. So it had to be an in-person notice to Vice President Tyler.
yeah. Well, that's an interesting piece. Those both are. Well, about the Dickens Library, were many of his books, did he do slipcases like that for many of his books? Do you have any idea?
The slipcases came, later, either
did
by the
they?
collector or, by firms that would have been handling
Oh, okay.
portions of his library. But portions of his library were sold off after his death.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting. Well, Richard Mori, are you still up there?
Yeah, I am.
You're here.
Fascinating.
Tell us again the dates and the time and location of the show.
So June 2nd, Concord, New Hampshire, at the Everett Arena. It's a well-known as landmark in Concord, easy to find right off of I-93, exit 14. And it opens at 10 o'clock in the morning. And where dealers are signing up, and we're expecting to have a normally good crowd.
Okay, well, good. And Richard Thorner, how can our viewers get in touch with you if they want to look at your stock and see what you have to offer?
Sure. I mean, I'm primarily a show dealer.
Right.
And unfortunately or unfortunately, I still practice law. It's very difficult to totally extricate yourself from one's profession like this. So I don't have a website.
Okay.
It's very difficult. My email address is info@Resser Thorner, and again it's RESSER Thorner, THORNER, all one word, .com. And I just wanted to add that the profession owes Richard Mori some thanks for continuing with a book fair at the Everett Arena. The Everett Arena has hosted a book and paper show for decades. And it was one of the first venues that really hosted paper and ephemera. There have been book fairs for, a century at least,
Yeah.
not longer here in America. But in terms of paper-oriented fairs, the Everett Arena in Concord is really one of the earliest venues where this has been going on. And, there were people back in the 80s, Roberta Carr being one of them, and others, John Hensey, who really were pioneers when it came to this. And the association and the collecting base, owes, the promoters who have been continuing with this show for so many years, Richard Mori being the most recent of them, a debt of gratitude, for continuing with the fair. It's a fun fair to do. Richard's a good promoter. It's not an expensive fair for the dealers to do. It's easy in, easy out. And the dealers who do it are really dyed-in-the-wool participants. So anyone who's in the area or even needs to travel to the area should really make an effort to come, both in terms of being a dealer, but also a patron and a customer.
Well, you've been very kind, Richard. You have to send me your address where I can send you that $1 check I owe you for that plug.
Yeah. You did well getting that.
I'll take it out in books, Richard. It's okay.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Thank you both for being with us today. It's been very informative, and we hope that anyone who's in the area will go to the show and hope it's a very successful show. I know from my own experience that Richard does a really good job of running a book fair. Just don't fall when you get outside the building.
Because Richard, I'm sure, doesn't have insurance anyway.
Yeah, no, probably not.
Well, and in fact, I want to be clear. I did not push her.
He did not push me. He was not close by. He made sure that I got extremely good care. He visited me in the hospital and in rehab, and I could not ask for better treatment from Richard Mori. So thank you both for being with us. And to our viewers, we will be having some reports from Greece from Ed, we hope, in the weeks to come. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.